If you're enjoying listening to Reilly and I on the Eat More Carbs podcast, please consider reviewing our podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to the Eat More Carbs podcast wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. This is the Eat More Carbs podcast. Hello and welcome to the Eat More Carbs podcast. My name is Jenna Fisher and I'm here with my co-host Reilly Beatty. Today we're going to be talking all about what to look for in a sports drink.
Before we jump into today's episode, this is just a quick reminder that if you want to meet one-on-one with a performance dietitian, Jenna and I are now accepting new clients. We offer a one-on-one consultation with a meal plan to help you get kick-started on your nutrition journey. And we also offer month-to-month plans to help with a little bit more accountability. Click on the link below to book a call today.
Reilly, I am so excited to talk about what to look for in a sports drink. I feel like you and I have talked a lot about this. I think maybe it was even one of the first episodes that I was on when I was a guest. That was almost a year ago now. So I'm super excited to talk about this today with you. Before we get into that though, what's your high and low?
Starting off with my low for this week. My low is just rompers. I love a romper. I think it's such an easy way to look cute and to dress. And I've gotten a couple new ones as I'm, postpartum. But my issue with a romper is when I pee, I'm literally feel like I'm naked and I need some help here because it's 2024 and I feel like we need to figure this out.
Okay, not a romper, but the Lululemon, I know you've talked about their Align line before and how that was great for you during pregnancy. They came out with an Align dress that has the bike shorts underneath so you can be active and do all the things, but the shorts are split so that way you can just pull the shorts down, sit down and use the restroom and stand back up, pull the shorts up, and the dress stays on the top half of your body so you're not sitting there awkwardly naked on the toilet.
This was not my high, but that might be my high for the week because that is literally amazing because I want a cute active outfit that I can maybe get a little sweaty in because it's about to be summer, but I didn't want to be naked when I'm peeing. So that's amazing.
Check it out. It's pricey like all of their things, but it might be worth the investment.
You're amazing. Thank you. My high for the week is this morning, I actually went on a long run for me for right now, which I'm really excited about. It was the fastest I have run and the longest I have run since finding out that I was pregnant with Charlie a year ago. So it's really nice to be back to running. I'm not anywhere close to where I want to be, but it just was really great to see some progress with my runs.
She's a runner.
Marathon in 8 months?
You got this. I remember when we used to run together in Las Vegas when we were interns at UNLV, and you kicked my butt when we ran all the way out to the Hoover Dam that one day. So I have no doubt that you'll be back to full speed in no time.
I forgot about that. That was fun.
I will share my high and low. My low, as I have shared before many a times, my dog George and I walk to the end of our street during the day just to get a little bit of movement. It's good for both of us. We get some sunshine. He gets to use the restroom. The street that we walk to is a little bit more trafficked, and a lot of times there's kids that are picked up, dropped off for school bus, school, carpool, stuff like that along that road. Things happen, and there happens to be a banana half eaten on the road that we walk on. And George, my sweet dog, loves bananas. And I don't know where this banana has been or who has enjoyed the other half of this banana, but I don't think I want George to eat the remaining sidewalk banana. And let me tell you, George went absolutely bananas when he saw a banana on the ground, which food is really exciting for a golden retriever. So he's very excited about the sidewalk banana. Get him back inside. George has been whining to go outside about every 30 minutes because he wants to go and attempt to retrieve said sidewalk banana. So if you hear whining in the background, it's because George has yet again, in an attempt to eat the sidewalk banana, come back and decided that he wants to ask to go outside again. So it's hard because, he's trained to ask to go outside, and that's a great thing that he does really, really well. He lets me know when he wants to go out, but I don't want him to eat the sidewalk banana. So I'm stuck in this pattern of wanting to let him go outside. So I'm trying to come up with other ways that we can still go out and just avoid the banana. So I might have to go and just clean it up. That might be the easiest option. And then he would go out there and see it's not there and he'd get over it. But George and the sidewalk banana, that's my low.
He's taking the Eat More Carbs slogan to heart, which I like that though.
My high, this is going to sound a little unusual, but for me, peanut butter M&Ms are an elite candy. I love peanut butter M&Ms. The other day, I heard that there were mini peanut butter M&Ms, and I love the mini M&Ms. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're like funner to eat, but I heard that they made peanut butter M&Ms like that. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to find these. And lo and behold, we were walking through the grocery store and I found mini peanut butter M&Ms. And let me just say, elite. Like oh my gosh, they're so good. They're so good.
You are full of great news today, like of amazing news.
From the Align dress to mini peanut butter M&Ms. That's it. That's a wrap. We're done for the day.
We're done. That's the podcast.
Okay, but actually, you might need to know a little bit more about hydration, especially if you are in a warmer climate. Reilly and I both live where it gets extremely hot during the summertime, but we're also training for marathons. So we need to be very cognizant of staying hydrated. We get a lot of questions about hydration, especially when people are like, how much should I be drinking like the day of my soccer game, swim meet, whatever it is? And truthfully, hydration goes beyond just one single moment in time. And you talk about hydration all the time, but I'd love to kind of talk a little bit more specifically about sports drinks, because we've had multiple conversations with both clients and one another recently about sports drinks. So what's the importance of hydration, just to kind of begin with?
Hydration is so important for athletic performance, but then also just for overall health. And yes, we talk about, hydration all the time as it pertains to athletic performance, but when we look at like health outcomes as well, having enough fluid, being properly hydrated is so important. I mean, it's so important to help make sure that we're maintaining body heat, cognitive function, and even like skin, hair, health, all of those, fun kind of side effects of being properly hydrated are super, super important.
One of the big things that hydration does that we maybe don't think of or think of often is it can really affect how we're feeling. And I know we often talk about, in performance, that even a small percentage of decrease of dehydration can lead to decreased performance in sport, but it can also lead to decreased performance in like cognitive function, kind of like you just mentioned. So there's a slew of things that are super important when it comes to making sure that you're properly hydrated. One of the questions that we get all the time, because there's so many things out there that's like, drink half your body weight in ounces, drink 2 liters, drink 1 liter. What do people need to be drinking in order to stay properly hydrated?
This is probably one of the hardest parts about nutrition because it is so individualized. And we were talking about this in our period recovery group when we were talking about hydration. When we look at like carbs and fats and proteins, we look at our macronutrients, we look at our micronutrients, there are set recommendations. Yes, there's ranges. Yes, it's very individualized, but there are like set numbers that have been researched that are a little bit easier just to like, say like a range. But with hydration, all of the papers talk about, okay, it's like so individualized. You have to, individualize it to the athlete. Yes, you have to drink to thirst, but, especially for athletes, there's a lot of times that you need to do planned hydration as well. So it is very, very individualized. I do think an easy guideline to kind of start off with, though, is if you are a female athlete, about 3 liters per day of fluids. And for male athletes, about 4 liters of fluid per day, just because of the general size difference and also the muscle mass difference between female and male athletes.
So now we have a great starting point for female and male athletes with how much hydration that we need. Can we consume that all at a single point in time, or is it better to space that out?
Please space that out. Please, please, please space that out. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see athletes make is really focusing on their hydration only during training. So we're seeing those athletes who are like, oh my gosh, I haven't drinking any water today. And then they chug a bottle of water and then they're shocked when they have to pee during training or when they have a headache during training because they've overwhelmed their, homeostasis, their body's balance when it comes to fluid. So please drink consistently throughout the day. If you're chugging a bottle of water at one time, just going to go in and out.
And we can be really cognizant of making sure that we're getting in enough fluid throughout the day if we're pairing like meals and snacks with hydration. That's always a good place to start, is saying, okay, anytime I'm consuming energy, I should try to pair that with a little bit of fluid if you're struggling with getting in enough fluid during the day. So that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, does everybody need a sports drink then? If we're consuming all of this liquid, like, do we need electrolytes within the fluid in order to make sure that we're performing, in order to make sure we're staying hydrated? How does that contribute to hydration? So many questions, but overall, who needs a sports drink?
So if you've listened to the Eat More Carbs podcast, I'm going to say it depends, because it really does depend. And when we also talk about sports drinks, we have lumped so many different products into this category. I remember like when I go to Costco with Robbie, like walking down the aisles and him being like, I am so confused because there's so many different hydration products. They all have different carbohydrates, electrolytes in them. They're all claiming that they're the best hydration product, and they're all all completely different. So it is so confusing on do you need a sports drink and which one that you need.
For starters, what is the difference between what we might consider like a sports drink and what you and I might look at as a hydration product? What are the differences?
When we look at hydration products on the market, it's best to understand the components of these sports drinks and understand the why, which is what we always talk about with our clients and our athletes at RBSN, because we have to understand why certain components are in these products. And therefore, we can understand the components, we can understand which product is best for us. So when we look at sports drinks or these hydration products, we're really looking at three components. The first component being fluid, the second component being electrolytes. So what electrolytes are actually present in these products. And then the third one is carbohydrates or sugar. How much carbohydrate, how much sugar is in these products. Obviously, fluids is the most obvious one because consuming any type of fluid is going to help with your rehydration, except for alcohol. When we're looking at a product like water, that is going to be a rehydrating product because it contains fluids. It's not going to contain any carbohydrate, it's not going to contain any electrolyte, but it is going to be fluid, so it's going to help replenish fluids. Same thing for products like Crystal Light or any of these powders that maybe we're mixing with water. Yes, the powder itself is not water or fluid, but it's helping you replenish the fluid that you lost during training, or it's helping you just meet your hydration goal throughout the day.
So something like a True Lemon or a Crystal Light contributing the fluid, but maybe not the electrolytes or the carbohydrates. When it comes to the electrolyte, I think this is a common misconception. One of the ones that you talk about most often and being the most important, especially for those who are performing in sport, is sodium and not necessarily some of the other ones that are advertised. Can you share about why that is?
When we look at athletes' sweat rate, the electrolyte that athletes lose the most of during a training session is going to be sodium. About 95% of the electrolytes that your body loses when you sweat are going to be sodium. So therefore, athletes are going to have differing and heightened sodium needs compared to the general population. The other electrolytes are not really present in sweat. Calcium, potassium, magnesium, yes, they are there and lost in sweat, but all of those are grouped into that 5% category versus our 95% category. So yes, those electrolytes are still important, but athletes are not going to necessarily have heightened needs for those electrolytes above the RDA or the recommended daily amount for the general population. So when we're looking at electrolytes and we're looking at the why for a sports drink, if we're using a sports drink to help replenish the fluids and electrolytes that were lost in sweat, the goal here is to have a product that contains sodium. If a product like a coconut water or coconut water based product contains a lot of potassium, well, that's great because we have, potassium needs just as a general person, but that's not going to help replenish the electrolytes that were lost in sweat because you're an athlete.
So interesting to hear that because I feel like so many of the hydration products on the market are promoting how much potassium their product has. And I think that might have a lot to do with that we associate potassium with cramping, but the one that we're losing in sweat, the one that we do need to replenish beyond because we have lost it, is that sodium. How does the carbohydrate then factor in? What's the purpose of it? Why is it important?
Carbohydrates are going to be our main fuel source for high intensity work. We have limited carbohydrate stores on our body. So having a product like a liquid energy product that can provide carbohydrate can help replenish the glycogen that is lost during training. But having some carbohydrate or some sugar in a product is also going to help increase the rate of absorption for the sodium. So not only are you going to be replenishing that glycogen or that stored carbohydrate, but you're going to be replenishing your electrolytes faster. That's what like a liquid IV is promoting when they talk about their special cellular transport technology. It's basically there's carbohydrate and there's sodium both in that powder.
Nothing new or fancy in science, but maybe new to the marketing department as far as how can we market this really cool thing that we know about from a scientific standpoint by adding carbohydrates or sugar along with sodium to help you rehydrate faster. Super cool and super interesting when we think about products like that. I have a lot of people that I work with that are trying to incorporate both carbohydrates and sodium post-exercise if they're exercising inappropriate for some type of a sports drink. And if you're not so much loving some of the really sweet sports products out there, you can always combine something that's salty with something that's sweet. That's a food product if you tolerate it really well. Or, we talk a lot about sports drinks being one that are incredibly beneficial. But if you're tolerating food well and you want to incorporate that instead of a sports drink, is that okay to do too?
Of course, we love food here.
So now that we've kind of established a great base for what to look for in a sports drink, I feel like there are so many out there that are maybe a little bit misleading with their advertising or how to pick them or things like that. So some of the ones that I want to ask about today specifically, because we've had questions about them recently, are Gatorade, Element, and then Prime, because those three are ones that we get asked a lot about. So break those down for us. Like, what are the components of each of those? And do we need to incorporate them?
I'm going to start off with Prime because that's, I feel like, the newest one on the market. And we've been talking a lot about Prime. When we look at Prime and we use our formula with fluid, electrolytes, and carbohydrates, we can start off with, yes, Prime is a fluid. It's going to help replenish any fluid that was lost and also can help somebody, drink more water or more fluid throughout the day. So I do think it's a great lifestyle product from that fluid perspective. When we look at the electrolytes, because Prime does market itself as a electrolyte product, as something to help rehydrate, the electrolyte that's going to be most present in Prime is going to be potassium. Kind of circling back, is this going to help replenish the electrolytes that were lost in sweat? Not really. It has minimal sodium in it, but the reason that Prime contains a lot of potassium. We see a couple other products like Body Armor contain a lot of potassium. That's because most of the general population in the United States do not meet the recommended daily amount of potassium that they need in the diet. So a lot of these products have, marketed to kind of change that by having a potassium heavy drink.
So in Prime, we have potassium and we have fluid. We don't have a lot of sodium in Prime. I had a bunch of kids that lived in my neighborhood in Ohio that loved to drink Prime just to have as a beverage to carry around with them. They thought it was cool, thought they were fun. So for them, it might be an appropriate product because we're not adding any additional sodium to their diet. We're adding fluid to maybe a population that's having a harder time drinking because maybe kids don't love water. But from a sports perspective, maybe not something we should gravitate towards because it doesn't have something that's going to actually rehydrate if we have been sweating.
Yes. And it also doesn't have a lot of carbohydrate or sugar in it as well. And again, that kind of supports this idea that it's more of a lifestyle product compared to a sports drink. So I do think the marketing on that is extremely confusing.
Definitely agree with you there, but that's the importance of having a dietitian, is to help you navigate whether or not products should be used for different fueling focuses. So if your fueling focus is to rehydrate yourself after you've played 90 minutes of a game, maybe not something we should be gravitating towards.
And I think Gatorade is actually, that's the second one on your list, is a product that is more appropriate for rehydrating after a soccer game, basketball game, a long run, or any type of high training competition. A Gatorade is going to have, again, look at our criteria. It's going to have fluid, it's going to have carbohydrates, and it's also going to have sodium as its main electrolyte. So I do like this product for an athlete that needs glycogen replenishment and then also needs some sodium and electrolyte replenishment as well.
So far we have Prime as a lifestyle beverage. We have Gatorade as a great sports drink. But what about Element? Where does that fall?
It doesn't have the fluid component, but you adding it to water, hopefully you're probably not eating it or dry scooping it. Please don't do that. It is going to be extremely high in sodium. It has about 1,000 milligrams of sodium and it doesn't have any carbohydrate in it. So this is actually a very interesting product to me because when I'm working with athletes and they need 1,000 milligrams of sodium because of how much they're sweating, they also probably need some glycogen replenishment as well. So it is a little challenging, I think, utilizing this product. If you need 1,000 milligrams of sodium, you need carbohydrate as well. So is that you're putting an element into a carbohydrate-based sports drink, maybe adding it to a Gatorade or a Powerade because there's carbohydrate there. There's not obviously as much sodium in a Gatorade compared to the element. I don't know if it's a great standalone product because of that function. I've seen a lot of runners utilize it because sometimes carbohydrates can affect their stomach. But if you need 1,000 milligrams of sodium, you're going to need carbohydrates with that as well.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. That pairing together can be so incredibly important because that doesn't mean that we just need them standalone. So if we're needing sodium, we're also needing fluid, and we might also be needing carbohydrate. So there's like a multitude of things there, especially after like a super long run. If you're outside, if you're sweating, if you're a heavy sweater.
I've seen a ton of influencers on Instagram consuming Element. And as you're our lifestyle specialist, what do you think about this product? Are you recommending this for your lifestyle nutrition clients?
Although Element might taste really good, it's not something that I use with a lot of lifestyle clients. Most lifestyle clients are weekend warriors. They might go to the gym in the evening, but they're not losing the amount of sodium that Element is going to then provide them. So the recommended amount of sodium that just a average person should consume in a day is about 2,300 milligrams of sodium. If we look at Element, that's about half of that recommended amount. Most people in the United States consume vastly higher amount than that recommended amount. We don't need to add extra sodium to our day if we're consuming food throughout the day, as most of the people that I am working with are consuming food. We get salt from the foods that we eat, so we don't necessarily need that much additional salt in a day, especially if we aren't exercising to the point where we are losing that amount of sodium. Most of the people that I work with might go to a workout class or something like that. And even that, they're probably not losing that much sodium that would then warrant the need for 1,000 milligrams of sodium. It's a lot of sodium. And for most of us, we don't need it unless we have some type of a condition in which we need additional salt in our day.
I feel like there's just been such a focus on consuming a product like that because it doesn't contain any sugar. But again, we look at our criteria. Carbohydrate is something that we want in a product, especially like a sport product that is appropriate for that amount of sodium.
I have a client I was actually talking to just yesterday, and we were talking about how water's feeling a little bit boring. She's not feeling like she's doing a great job hydrating. So we were coming up with different ways to make sure she was still getting in liquid and still staying hydrated. So we talked about things like tea. She's not really someone who loves like super sweet things. So we were talking about other ways that we could incorporate fun flavors to her liquid that helped her consume higher amounts of liquid so she wasn't getting dehydrated through her long days at work. So things like that are things that we can work on when we're thinking about more of a lifestyle approach to hydration versus making sure that we're replacing those electrolytes. For someone who might be marathon training, like you might use an Element during your marathon training, but you've probably also paired it with some type of a carbohydrate, just like you said. So again, we have different fueling focuses. These things can be used in different ways. We don't need to just consume them because our favorite influencer has a discount code.
And this just kind of circles back to what we talked about in the beginning on this. It really just depends. And it is really confusing as a consumer because there's all these hydration products that are claiming to do the same things, but they're so different. And that's why we really do recommend figuring out the why and using those three kind of categories to see which product is right for you.
Unfortunately, we don't have 3 hours to talk about different scenarios when it comes to fluid and hydration. Any final thoughts on sports drinks, Reilly?
Just as a reminder to, reach out to us either on the Eat More Carbs page or on Instagrams or send us a message because, again, this is so individualized and we are here to help you and support you on your journey.
We always want to be a resource when it comes to fueling and for hydration as well. So just like Reilly said, please always reach out to us. We're happy to talk through any different scenario that you might be going through. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. When it comes to finding the sports drink that's right for you, make sure you're checking out the food label and looking for fluid, electrolytes, and carbohydrates. If you have questions for Reilly and I, you can always find us on Instagram. We're at the Eat More Carbs podcast, or you can just leave them below this podcast. You can find Reilly on Instagram at reilly.beatty.nutrition, and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thank you again for listening. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.